Hey Shay, so let's go ahead and watch through this really quick. I want to give you some feedback on it. A couple small things, like render-wise, you're getting like some glow off of the character. I'm guessing that may be because of like incandescence that's turned up on the mesh, but that's not that big of a deal animation-wise. The thing that I noticed the most um, is sort of the way the characters move. It's kind of like they hit a wall and then freeze and then turn and then freeze. So you see how that character here, like it kind of bounces in, right? And then like just like stops dead. And then like we get what's called pixel death, which you see is as I scrub through here, none of these pixels really change. And so that's something that you kind of want to watch out for in animating in 3D. So what happens is the reason that's like that is just gonna let me draw. Okay, maybe I have to go back to that. Huh, that's weird. For some reason my pen isn't working. Um, so let's just go ahead and draw it here. So let's say you have your curve here, and then the object moves, and then it gets to this point, and then it kind of flattens out again, and you get these lines that are perfectly flat. Maybe you have a keyframe there, and a keyframe there, a keyframe there, and a keyframe there. And so what you want to watch out for is this key being the exact same as this key. So you don't want these two keys being the exact same. So what I usually do is I will take one and I'll move it down a little bit. And so what you end up getting is instead of that curve, you get a little bit more like this, right? And so it's constantly, by the point it gets to right here, it's still kind of moving very, very faintly. And this is called a moving hold, which means you're almost at that same point, but the character doesn't get this, what we call pixel death, which is where where nothing at all changes. So you can see that I put like a little dot right there. And in comparison to that little dot, the eye just is not doing anything. Like it's staying in the exact same spot. And so we get that in a few spots. So you'll see that the character here, the big character, just kind of freezes. The little characters freeze there, and then this one kind of freezes there. They move forward and they freeze. And so you just really have to go through there in the on every curve and just make sure that that doesn't happen. Um, Otherwise, this one's working pretty good. You got some that kind of feel like they're like duplicate keyframes. So let's see if I can draw this. Let's say you have this character kind of bobbing up and down. If we went and looked at the curve for that, maybe it looks like this or something. And so you got a keyframe here and here and here. And so what ends up happening, why it looks like it's almost like seesawing back and forth when the character moves, is because all of these curves look exactly the same. It's like a sine wave, right? So what you may end up doing is taking like this curve and maybe move it down just a touch, and then you also, like let's say your translate Y or translate Z or something is just perfectly straight. Well, maybe it needs a little bit of motion in it too. So instead of just that, maybe you move this curve down a little bit, and so what you end up with is a little bit more like, a little bit more like this or something like that through this curve, and then maybe this one doesn't go up that high. Maybe it just comes down to like here. And so just by mixing it up and making it a little less systematic, you're going to get a little bit more natural motion. Now, another reason that sometimes happens is when you only have translate keyframes set on your translations and no rotations. And so that's going to feel like stuff is moving linearly. But if something's moving and rotating a little bit, even if it's just to drag, then it will loosen it up. The last thing I would say is very small stuff with the eyes. The eye kind of seems locked in place, and so what eyes usually do is they dart around really quick. So this will shift maybe just a touch, just a really very slight look over, and then it'll kind of hold it there, and then it'll dart up just a little bit and hold it there, and then dart over and hold it there. And so what you have is usually the eye moves in like these little two-frame bursts very subtly. And so really small movements, but like in these little, 2 frames it'll move, and then it'll hold that for like 10 frames, and then over 2 frames it'll move again and hold that for about 10 frames. And so you don't have to stick very closely to those numbers, but that's just something you'll see happening with eye darts. Also the blinks, and you only see this one blink. I think that this is happening over, it feels about like 4 or 5 frames to close and 4 or 5 frames to open. And usually blinks, oh, and it doesn't hold closed at all. It's like it hits and recoils. So usually what blinks do is you have open, right, you have your open curve, and you have your open curve over here after it's back open again. What you want is you want it to transition to closed over about 2 frames. So 1, 2, right? And then you want it to hold closed for about 2 frames. 1, 2. And then you want it to transition back over open over 2 or 3 frames. All right, so that's maybe 1, 2, 3. All right, so that's kind of the way you want to divvy up those keyframes. On top of that, you may not want the curve to go straight down like that. What you may want to do is have it sort of slam shut. So let's say instead of going closed like that and then back open, maybe what you actually do is you kind of favor the open a little bit, and that way you can slam it shut. And so what that means is as it starts to blink, there'll be 1 frame where it's like this, and then the next frame it'll be completely shut, right? As opposed to this just dividing this in half. And so you get a little bit of it's favoring the open pose a little bit. So hopefully that makes sense, but that's a very nitpicky thing, but the blinks could use a little bit of work. And I think the timing on this just kind of bobbles up and down, but it's kind of again, sort of that seesaw motion. And that may just be because it's just kind of going straight up and down. So you may want to like have it hit the down pose and maybe hold that just a little bit longer, or hit the up pose and have it hold it just a little longer, so it doesn't just feel like it's a sort of seesawing back and forth too perfectly. Otherwise, I know it sounds like a lot of notes, but for the most part this is actually looking really good. Those are just some things that I would say would really help improve it. Kind of keep it feeling a little more fleshy. And so hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.